All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining for our September nutrition webinar. I'm Julie Lanford, and I am actually I have a new title, Community Engagement Director. So I should update that on my slide, but for Cancer Services. And I'm the author of cancerdietitian.com. And I am happy to have you join with me today. I have been doing webinars every other month this year. So if you'd like to watch any of the previous webinars that I've offered, you can find those over at cancerdietitian.com and just click on the webinar tab. So today's topic, we are discussing grocery shopping and how to make a successful trip and stock your home with healthy groceries. To get started, I always like to begin just by telling you about me in case you aren't familiar with me. Now, many of you have been, kind of followers for a while, but some of you may be new. So I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm a board certified specialist in oncology nutrition, which just means oncology is my specialty. I have a master's in public health from UNC Chapel Hill, and I did my bachelor's degree in biology from NC State. So I always share with people my credentials because it feels like everyone has an opinion on food. Certainly, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but they're not always expert opinions. So what I try to do for my clients and anybody who's reading my information online or watching webinars is to make sure that I am providing you with the most up-to-date science-based nutrition information. If I'm giving you information that maybe isn't based on strong science, I'll disclose that and kind of help you to make an educated choice for yourself. But I do encourage people to make sure if you are getting nutrition information, especially cancer nutrition information, that you verify the source or who's giving it to you in order for you to know how much you should trust that. Because I find a lot of my clients have been misguided by maybe well-intentioned, but not so evidence-based focused people. So that said, I also work for Cancer Services, which is a nonprofit in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they are who pays my salary and makes sure that I can offer these programs available to you at no charge. So when you're in a position to make a donation to your favorite charity, we ask you think of us, and that's Cancer Services. All right. I think that's all the business for today, and we're going to jump right into our topic of healthy grocery shopping. So these are the items I am going to cover this afternoon. It's afternoon for me. It might be midday for you or evening, or who knows if you're watching the recording, what time you're watching it. But what we're going to discuss is what should be in your cart. It might be your physical cart that you have at the grocery store. It might be your virtual cart. I do often use the digital shopping and sort of pickup option, which I really love. And so I think it's a great service that can help save you time, save you energy, and streamline your grocery, as well as help you if you find items that you really like that are delicious and nutritious. At least the app I use at my grocery store, you can just basically preload your cart with items you've bought before, and that makes it really simple. I'll cover shopping tips. I will discuss reading the food label and looking at ingredients. So if you're somebody who's listening just to the audio, maybe you can have a food label in front of you as you're hearing this, because some of it does require a little bit of visual to kind of see where things are. And then we'll talk about shopping goals and just suggested maybe categories or types of food that you would want to include in your grocery shopping list. First of all, let's talk about making a successful trip and what should be in your cart. So when it comes to grocery shopping, we really focus on colorful, nutritious foods. And that's not colorful because of the food coloring, but colorful because they're naturally grown with lots of colors. So I offer the Eat the Rainbow program, which is very much focused on sort of fruits and vegetables and produce. And in that program, I talk a lot about how different colored fruits and vegetables just essentially represent different types of nutrients. You don't have to know the nutrient profile of all the foods, but when you fill your cart with lots of different colors, that's an indicator that you're getting a good variety of nutrition. So A variety of fresh or frozen fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which are beans, nuts, and seeds, are what we focus a lot on. So those offer vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, fiber, and antioxidants that promote health. So when I think about the cart, that's what you want most of your cart to be filled up with, because that way, if your pantry or your fridge is filled with these things, that's most likely what you're going to eat, and that's what we're looking for. Are there things that you should avoid? So, there's nothing that we think you always or could never have. That's what I say, is that there's nothing I would tell you could never ever have. We might recommend that you have less of something, or sometimes we use the word limit. That's like our, fun word when we don't want to have to say you can't have that. So I never tell anybody there's any one food they could never have. Some people might choose not to have certain foods, and that's their own personal choice, and that's fine. So some people might choose not to have meat. Some people might choose not to have dairy. Some people might choose not to have bacon. Those are that's fine options if you like, if that fits your lifestyle. But if there are certain foods that maybe are on our limit list, but you really enjoy them, I would tell you to find some kind of balance that you're comfortable with, where you can have them sometimes and kind of help fill your, feed your soul is what I call it, those foods that help feed your soul. Allow yourself those in some kind of moderation so that you can really enjoy what you're eating. So some of the things we might suggest you limit or avoid would be red and processed meat. So rather maybe eating more fish, poultry, and plant-based proteins, and less red meat and limited processed meat. So plant-based proteins include beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. Then choosing water and unsweetened drinks over sugary drinks. That's another sort of limit sugar sweetened beverages recommendation. And then keeping your eye on the amount of sodium and added sugars that are in any food items, and rather choosing ones that are less high in sodium, so lower sodium items or lower in added sugars, or you buy the no added sugar version and then add what you need at home so that you are in control of how much is added. So kind of the key nutrients or foods that we're looking to limit are red and processed meat, sugary drinks, and then high sodium or added sugar products. So here's a few tips for you. I mean, you probably have heard these your whole life, which is before you go shopping, make a list so you know what you want. Or if you're going to be shopping on, your phone or your grocery shopping app, it's helpful. Like, I tend to make a list before I get on the app. Now, oftentimes you can use the app as your grocery list. So that's handy if you're using it kind of throughout the week to just add things that you know you need. I tend to keep a grocery list separate from my shopping app. I don't know why. That's just how I do it. And then I typically spend a few minutes kind of planning out some dinners for the week ahead. If you're someone who shops once a week, you might want to think about most of your dinners and what you might need for those and lunches. And if you're somebody who shops more than once a week, that makes it a little bit less pressure on your grocery list. So I do try to do a little bit of meal planning. I don't do a lot. It's not my favorite thing. But so that I have a list, the last thing I want to do is to make my whole list, put it together, send it off to, my personal shopper so I can go pick up and then remember, oh, I forgot that one thing. But I personally would rather go in and buy one thing from the grocery store than have to go in and buy the whole list. So make your shopping list before you head out to the store or before you log on to your app to fill your grocery cart. It just makes everything less stressful and you tend to make more nutritious choices. Eat before you go is also a good suggestion, because research suggests that doing grocery shopping while you're hungry can affect what people buy. I mean, I feel like that's common sense. Do we need research on that, really? The other thing that eating before you go helps is your budget, because you're going to impulse buy less, and you don't want hunger to be affecting your choices or overspending your food budget. So, you can make it a whole event if you want to. Sort of, my grocery store has like a Starbucks. I might make it an event and have something to drink and make sure that I've had a meal or a snack before I go. And that way you're not going to overbuy or make impulse buys that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise. Check the sales before heading out. Now, my grocery store app has sales on the app, but also I tend to buy kind of, as I'm shopping at the store, I might substitute this item or that item for the one that's on sale. But especially the produce items, when they're on sale, they tend to be more in season, which means they're typically more flavorful. So I do like to kind of follow the sales and the specials that are out there for produce items, because it tends, I can kind of interchange, well, which fruits do I want this week, or which vegetables? Some recipes you can change those out. So being flexible on your grocery list can be helpful as well for your budget and for just trying out different new foods. So as you get through, you're not really going to read a food label if you're going through. As I think about my grocery store, I tend to go through the produce first, and then I get to things like the bread aisle. I get to the pantry items aisle, which is where I might find canned foods or frozen foods. And then for me, like milk and yogurt tend to be at the far end. So what I would tell you is, first of all, when you're looking at a food item and trying to decide whether it's nutritious or not and whether you want to spend your money on it, there's two kind of key places for you to find data about the food product. The ingredient list and the nutrition facts label. Now, I know food packaging on the front, if I had one to show you, I'd show you, but the front of a food package can look kind of fancy and pretty, and they make all kinds of claims on the front, like low in this, or they make claims about organic or GMO or all those things. But what I always remind you is that the food packaging, the front of the package of food, is mostly marketing and sales. Okay, so a lot of the claims and words that are on the front are not necessarily legal terms. And something like natural, all natural, there is no legal definition to that. So it basically means nothing, right? It just sounds good and makes you want to buy it. So I just tell people to basically, kind of ignore the verbiage and the pretty front of the package, and rather turn it around to the back so you can get to the facts and figure out whether this is something nutritious that you want to buy. So always using, I tend to start with the ingredient list. That's why I put this slide first, because you want to know that what you're expecting to buy is what you're actually getting. That's the first thing I look for is, hey, is this a product that the ingredient list reflects what I think I'm getting? So the ingredients are listed in order by what is used in the greatest amount to the least amount. And by greatest, that's going to be by weight. So if it's something that's a liquid, water might be the first ingredient because that might be the most by weight. And then if you want to know, okay, if this is a whole grain product, you want it to say, whole wheat flour or whole grain oats, something like that. So if there's refined flour, if there's sort of sugar in there, you want it to not be the first ingredient, ideally. Sugar does provide good flavor to some of our foods. Certainly things like granola bars, you're not going to find a granola bar that tastes good that has 0 sugar, and otherwise it has artificial sweeteners or something else in it. So it's not necessarily like that you should never buy anything that has sugar in it. You just want to make sure that the amount of sugar seems reasonable for how you want to nourish yourself. So watching out for refined flours, finding where sugar is on the order of list, or hydrogenated oils. If there's a lot of those types of things early on in the list, then I would be cautious. And I also do, though, encourage you, I'm not so worried about, sometimes there's really long ingredient lists and it looks scary, or really long words for ingredients. And you may have heard a person or two say, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, then don't buy the food. I don't think that's a very science-based approach to nutritious eating. I think that we have all kinds of names for things. Ascorbic acid is just vitamin C, or I don't even know, vitamin D is official name on the ingredient list is very long and chemical looking. You know, water is technically a chemical. So there's nothing wrong with some like a long ingredient list as long as the things on the ingredients are kind of what we would expect. And when I get to the end of the presentation and in the show notes, I'll be sure to put links to I think there's like 1 or 2 different places where you can look up ingredients. If you don't have a clue what they are, you can look them up and they'll tell you, okay, this is what that is, and this is what it's used for, and this is how likely it is to cause any harm. Most of our food ingredients are, if they're food additives or preservatives, it's a very small amount that's added just to make sure that the food doesn't spoil, and so it can be shelf stable for those, you know, shelf items. The other thing that I would tell you is that ingredients are approved by the FDA before they can be added to foods. And I do trust our food supply system. It's the safest that it's ever been. So, you know, while some people might kind of make you think that our somehow food system has a lot of additives that just aren't good for you, I am confident that if you eat good, nutritious foods, you know, mostly fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, I don't worry about the food preservatives and things that are in the pantry type items or some of the more processed food items, because if you're having a balance between those sort of fresh and less processed foods and some of the foods that are processed with other ingredients in them, I think you will be fine. And I do trust that they are not harmful. I do trust our food system. I did a whole blog series maybe last year or the year before about, is our food safe? So if you're interested in more of that, you can always go look those up. I think I did a webinar on it too. Okay, so that's the ingredient list. Basically, scan the ingredient list and see if it's reasonable for what the food item is. And then once you kind of know what the food is made out of, then you go back and look at the nutrition facts to see if it's providing the nutrients that you're looking for in that food item. So the things that I tend to look for, first of all, you want to look at serving size, because the whole rest of the nutrition facts label is giving you nutrient information per serving. And you have to ask, okay, am I going to have like, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 servings of this food when I eat? And then the things that I tend to look for, I look at, I'll start on the left here for those of you who are watching the video, saturated fat and trans fat. Now, most items at this point, food items, they found a way to not use trans fat. So most of them will be at 0. I think 0 or 1 would be fine. I would avoid products that have a lot of trans fat. I can't even think of an item I've seen lately that does. But saturated fat is one of the less healthy fats. Some is okay. We don't want a lot. And really, when we talk about our fat intake, we want to have more of the unsaturated fats and less of the saturated fats. So like on this food label, you can see monounsaturated fat is at 4.9. I mean, I just round that up to 5, but well, it's 4.9. And the saturated fat is 1. So I'd say the ratio looks pretty good. The next thing that you would look for when you go down would be the sodium, how much sodium is in the product. Now, some items, we expect sodium to be in them, like salted nuts, but it's usually not a significant amount. And then I would look for, in the carbohydrate section, total carbohydrates are fine. Like, there's a wide range in the number of carbohydrates you should have in a day. So I don't make decisions based on how much carbs. I like to see how many total added sugars there are. It's nice. They changed the food label a couple of years ago so that under total sugars, you see the line that includes how many grams of added sugars. We're most concerned about added sugars. Natural sugars are things like fruit sugar, milk sugar, and those are fine to have. We want to limit our added sugars. So that's why we have that separated. And the other thing to look for under total carbohydrates is fiber. So fiber is listed under carbohydrate. Fiber is good for you. You want to look for higher fiber choices when possible. So, you know, in this picture here, like by the high fiber choices words, we have a picture of a granola bar. So if you're buying a granola bar or a cereal or a bread or crackers, something that is in the grain category, you want it to have fiber, and ideally it's fiber coming from the natural components of the food item. So that would mean it has a whole grain. So on the ingredient list, you would look for whole, grain flours as opposed to refined flours, and then you would check the dietary fiber. 6 grams is pretty high for one serving. I'm not sure actually what the food item is. So if it were a granola bar, you might be more like 2 or 3 grams of fiber. If it's a cereal, you might actually get up more like 5 or 6 grams for a whole grain cereal. Okay, so I think that covers what we've got here. So the things that I look for, I don't look at total fat. I just focus on saturated fat and monounsaturated fat. I check out the sodium. The amount of cholesterol doesn't matter to me. I don't look at total carbohydrates. I do look at fiber, and I look at how much added sugars. You'll notice there is protein on the nutrition facts label. So if you think you're buying a product that is providing you protein, you would double check and make sure that's on there. The other thing I'll point out here too is that there are some products that don't have fiber. I mean, you're not going to get fiber from a meat or a dairy product. So that would be like yogurt. If a yogurt had fiber in it, it's because it's been added like later. So it's, it doesn't mean that you have to only buy products with a certain nutrient profile. It should sort of line up with the type of item you're having. So if it's a protein item, the thing that I would point out here is if you're having some kind of milk, you're choosing a milk and you've decided you don't want cow's milk and you want some kind of alternative milk, I would want you to check the protein on the nutrition facts label to make sure it matches equivalent with cow's milk. That's when I would look for protein. Or if you're looking at a whole grain, or if you're looking at something like, oh, these are veggie chips. If they're really veggies, then there would be fiber in them. And so I'm a little skeptical. I would check the ingredient list to see what veggies is this veggie chip actually made out of. Usually it's mostly like potato starch and then a little bit of other veggies that there's not that much. And then check if there's fiber, because if there's actual vegetables in it, there's fiber. I have seen, I don't know if anybody's tried, they look like cheese hoofs, but they're made out of like garbanzo bean flour, I think. So I have found those to be nutritious and they taste good and they have a little bit of protein. And so those, I think those are a pretty good crunchy snack that still give you some fiber. They probably also have protein in them if they're made out of garbanzo bean flour. Whereas I, sometimes do buy the veggie crisps because my kids like them, but they are not veggie. They are just crunchy things. So our goals for shopping are to supply ingredients for the recipes that you plan to make, stock up on a variety of easy to eat foods, and choose quality sources that promote health. So to me, in my grocery cart, there's kind of two things. There's one, which is what ingredients do I need to make the recipes that I'm going to have this week? And then secondarily, what types of sort of easy, ready to eat foods do I need to have to make my life simple? You may be in a phase of treatment or a phase of life where you don't have a lot of time to prepare recipes. And instead, you're going to be heavy on the ready to eat or easy to prepare types of foods. Or you're a foodie person and you love to be in the kitchen and you might be more heavy on ingredients for recipes that you want to try. There's nothing wrong with either approach. I just want people to be realistic about where they are. Most of the food waste in our country actually comes from the fridges of individuals who don't use the food that they buy. So I do want us to be very sort of strategic about how we buy and what we buy, and so that we're limiting the amount of food waste. I don't like wasting food. And then, of course, we want, nutritious foods that nourish our bodies. So the next few slides I'm going to go through is just suggested items to have on your grocery list. Or let's say you're somebody who doesn't really plan that far ahead, and you're just going to the grocery store, and you're going to go to the grocery store and you're going to buy some things, and that's what you're going to eat this week. You will want to kind of make sure you have that variety of foods, which is fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, representing all of the food groups, right? And if you need more on that, I've got other webinars. But what we'll go through as I go through the shopping list is kind of how to make sure, you know, you're stocking your cart with those things, but also where can you get those? Because there's multiple parts of the grocery store that you can get fruits and vegetables. So we'll start with produce. Obviously fresh fruit, fresh herbs, but also some of those packaged, easy to eat or ready to eat types of foods that provide you with produce would be applesauce, fruit cups. I usually tend to buy the ones that are packaged in fruit juice as opposed to any syrup. Raw vegetables, I like to buy, this picture doesn't show it. This picture, of course, shows like whole vegetables, but the types of raw vegetables I like to buy so they're easy to throw in my lunch or snack on are baby carrots, baby cucumbers, little tomatoes, anything that's like individual, ready to eat. All you have to do, sometimes you don't even have to wash them, but maybe you just rinse them off and put them in your lunch box. Same thing with fruit. I like to buy the fruits that don't require a lot of prep. Bananas. I prefer to get like berries or grapes over apples for whatever reason. I like pieces of fruit to pick up and eat. So apples, I prefer them sliced. So that takes a little bit more work. Freeze-dried vegetables are a perfectly fine option. Freeze-dried fruit, they are pricey per pound, I will say, but they're still nutritious and good for you. Hummus or any other type of bean dip is a great way to, you know, combo like a protein with a vegetable. And hummus really also counts as a vegetable. Salad kits, I love salad kits. It's kind of changed my life because I really do like salads, but I don't really appreciate all the time and effort it takes to make a good salad. So if you buy the salad kit, that helps to save you time. Sometimes I'll buy a salad kit and I'll buy extra just like chopped lettuce or chopped cabbage, and then I'll add a little extra to the salad kit because I think they give more dressing than I need. So I just add extra lettuce or cabbage to the salad kit, and then the dressing seems just right. So it's kind of a little budget and nutrition hack. And then tofu is typically found in the produce section. I like tofu. There's a tofu chocolate pudding recipe that I have. I like tofu just stir fried. You can have it marinated and put it on salads. So there's a lot of options when it comes to tofu. It's a really significant, like protein packed vegetable, basically. All right, so in the frozen section, as you're going down the frozen aisle, I would check out what kind of frozen fruits they have, the frozen vegetables. Sometimes frozen is almost fresher than fresh because what happens is they pick the produce at the height of ripeness for the frozen ones, and then they freeze it there, and then it's transported after it's frozen. And so that preserves its nutrition. So, you know, as opposed to some of the fresh foods that come from a long ways away, there's nothing wrong with that, but they tend to be picked a little bit early so that they are still ripening through the transport process. And that way it's, you know, it's a little bit longer between when they're picked and when they're ready to eat. Whereas frozen produce has been picked when it's ripe and then preserved as freezing. The other great thing about frozen vegetables, at least, is you do not have to prep them. So, I mean, that's so handy. I don't know if anybody's used frozen diced onions. I mean, that was a lifesaver. It's you know, you don't have to get an onion out. You don't have to chop it. You don't have to like have all the tears. So I always keep frozen diced onions in my freezer. I tend to keep a little variety of frozen vegetables. I like to have frozen spinach for my smoothies. I like to have like the peas and carrots you can see in the picture to throw in different things. I love having frozen corn always available to toss in all types of things. Even salads, you can throw frozen corn into a salad, and if it's long enough before you're going to eat, then it's thawed and ready to eat. So I do try to keep, especially my grocery store will have great sales on frozen vegetables. And if you can find store brand, they're even cheaper. Other things to check out in the frozen food aisle is all fruit frozen popsicles. That's a fun dessert. And whole grain waffles. What is the brand that Kodiak Cakes is a brand I usually get for whole grain waffles because I think they taste good. And they have a few different versions, like they have chocolate chip or blueberry. And they use a high protein flour, which is handy. Okay, of course, pantry staples. I almost run off the page on this one, but these are things that are handy to have. Granola bars. So I try to find granola bars with a fair amount of fiber. High fiber cereals, whole grain fig Newtons are great little snacks that can give you fiber, whole grain bread, pretzels, whole grain crackers. My favorite is Triscuits. If you've been to enough of my webinars, I probably talk about Triscuits and like baby carrots every time. Chips are, I think, fine. Like if you can get corn tortilla chips, those are technically whole grain. Also, popcorn is a whole grain, so that's fun. And whole grain pancake mix, I think, is really handy to keep around. The Kodiak cake pancake mix is what we buy. We buy it at Costco. And you can use it to make muffins. You can use it to make pancakes. You can use it to make waffles. So it's very versatile. Other things to get in the sort of interior aisles of the grocery store: canned fish, canned chicken, canned or dried beans. Those are all really convenient and easy protein items. Nut butters, nuts, barley. So this would be sort of your whole grain section would be barley, brown rice, quinoa, oats, dried fruit are great, easy ways to get fruit in that you can, keep as a handy snack. And then fruit cups, we kind of already talked about. All right, so then if you are a meat eater and a dairy eater, you can pick up your animal protein, chicken, turkey, fish, shrimp, lean beef, lean pork. So beef and pork are considered a red meat, and the limit on that, or the suggested limit, is 18 ounces a week or less. Eggs, cheese, and yogurt are all good sources of protein, and other nutrients, calcium, magnesium, potassium. They do not have fiber. So if you're looking at any food labels on cheese or yogurt or milk, you will not find fiber, and that's expected and totally fine. I tend to buy some of the, cheese sticks that are easy to throw in my lunch. I like that. And then beverages. So if you're wanting to make sure you don't have a lot of added sugar or sugary sweetened beverages, but you still want something kind of different to drink during the day, I recommend coffee. I recommend tea. It could be caffeinated tea or uncaffeinated tea or like infusions. I tend to go through the tea aisle and just take a few that I think would look fun. And you can have those as hot tea, or you can make them hot and then put them in the fridge so you have something just different to drink. Water, sparkling water can be fun, and a mint leaf and a lemon, and that's so fancy. And then other options for beverages that are nutritious: milk. We consider it low-fat milk if it's 1% or skim. 2% is considered reduced fat. Kefir is another, I think, fun option as a beverage drink. I would get the plain kefir. I don't mind drinking it plain. It tastes like buttermilk, which is a sour kind of, it tastes like sour yogurt basically that you're drinking. I can drink maybe 4 or 5 ounces of it just plain and a little bit sour, and I like it, but more than that much, I just get tired of it. But I also will use kefir in my smoothies. So if I'm having a fruit smoothie, and I'll use kefir instead of milk just to get it a little, different flavor and nutrient profile. 100% juice is a beverage option. I tell my clients that up to 1 serving of fruit a day could be from juice. So that's 4 or 5 ounces of juice. You can just have that in a small serving cup, or you can, mix juice with water. I think juice is pretty sweet. So mixing it with water is how I'd make it sort of go further, or mix 100% fruit juice with sparkling water, and then you really have a fancy beverage. So those are options. And then soy milk is another, I think, good option for a beverage if you're kind of tired of water. My daughter actually was making a chai tea latte for herself. So she was brewing chai tea, and then she prefers soy milk. So she's heating up soy milk and mixing them together. And there you have a delicious beverage. Okay, so that is basically it for our content today. I haven't seen any questions come in so far. So if you have any specific questions, I encourage you to put them in. Either the chat or the Q&A. What I will tell you, if you want more information about any of this, you can sign up for my Survivor Diet email series, which is cancerdietitian.com/survivor diet, and it just talks about what the current recommendations for cancer survivors are. You can save the date for my next webinar, which is going to be Thursday, November 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And I decided my topic today will be cancer nutrition hot topics. So we'll be covering a variety. It'll be talking about sugar and soy and processed meat and alcohol and grilled foods, those types of things. And then if you need more, so as we went through all the different food groups, thinking about filling your cart, if you're not super familiar with which foods count in which food groups, because if you've watched any of my other webinars, I talk about having a balanced plate or a healthy eating pattern of intake. And it very much builds on having kind of an optimal combination of food groups. So I think about the 4 main food groups being fruits, vegetables, grains, and protein. If you need a little bit more kind of help understanding which foods go in what food group, you can check out myplate.gov. I think it's really great information and helps kind of fill in those gaps. And then as we were talking about the ingredients on your food list, so the ingredient list, if you're not sure what something is and you want to look it up, I do recommend chemicalcuisine.org as an easy way to look up food ingredients. And they rank them like green for perfectly safe, orange for like, yeah, we're really not sure, it might be okay, but maybe limit these, and then red as like there's evidence you should not really eat these very often. Again, there's nothing that I think would be in our food supply that is toxic that you should absolutely always avoid unless you have an allergy, obviously. Like if you are celiac, you have to avoid gluten. If you are allergic to dairy, you shouldn't eat certain things. But the general public, in terms of how safe are these food, ingredients or preservatives that might be added to our food, they've been proven safe before being added to the food supply. So I'm not worried about that, but there are some things that we would say, hey, maybe limit these, have these less often. And then another place you can look for food ingredients is FDA.gov. And this is a whole, I drilled down to where that is. On their website, it's a little harder to use than the chemicalcuisine.org. I will say that. But I think both places are good places to look. So I'll make sure to put those in the show notes so that if you want to just click on the link, you can do that. All right. Last chance for any questions. Otherwise, we are going to be done for this particular webinar. So that's what I have to say. I say thank you. Thanks for being here. And if you do have questions and it's after the fact, you can always contact me at cancerdietitian.com. You can click on the contact tab and that goes to my email address, and I'm happy to answer questions later. That's it for today. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.